Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Live with Love. I'm Julie Roginsky here with my Lift Our Voices co-founder, Gretchen Carlson. Hey, Gretchen.
Hey, how are you?
Good. You've been away, which is why we haven't been able to do this over the last few weeks. Gretchen, you were traveling to really awesome places.
Yeah, I was traveling to Egypt well, no, we did one after that. But anyway, Morocco and all that doesn't matter. We're back. We're talking about important things.
We're back and we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, which is what everybody seems to be talking about. But we have a bit of a unique perspective, not because mercifully either of us was ever trafficked or suffered through what these girls who are now women suffered through, but because we kind of understand what it's like to go up against powerful men and to be ignored until you take matters into your own hands and you hold them accountable, regardless of whether anybody expects you to or not, which is what these survivors have been so bravely doing, including today at a Capitol Hill press conference attended by bipartisan members of Congress. And I do want to be clear, this is a bipartisan issue. There are people on both sides of the aisle who are fighting for the release of the Epstein files. There are people who have been on both sides of the aisle who sadly decided to take Jeffrey Epstein's side even after he was an adjudicated child molester, and continue to befriend him and continue to spend time with him and continue to treat him like, you know, a member of polite society. So unfortunately, as we always say, this is a tangled web, and it's not just limited to one political party or another. And this really just proves kind of what's been going on from that perspective. I do want to play a clip of Virginia.
Can I just say something really quick before that?
Yeah.
Because what I've been saying when I've been doing commentary on this on TV is that power is bigger than party. The power in all of these kind of sexual harassment cases, sexual assault, grooming people, raping people. I mean, that is all about power over somebody else for whatever reason. If it's your job at work, or if you're a younger underage person and it's an older man, or if you're just a regular 30-year-old who gets raped, that's about power. And that supersedes party. It does. I mean, we saw that in our cases with Roger Ailes, you know? I mean, I'm an independent, you're a Democrat. Like, it didn't matter. Nobody gives a shit what your party is before they decide to assault you. They don't say, hey, what party are you in first? So yeah. I think it's really important to point that out in this case too. And we've been seeing that unfold on Capitol Hill, where you have Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie. They couldn't be more divergent, and Marjorie Taylor Greene on their own politics. We've seen this happen on our issues, bringing people together. Lindsey Graham and Kirsten Gillibrand, senators from opposite ends of the world, who agree that we should get rid of silencing mechanisms. So it's interesting to me that we're sort of seeing like what we've been doing playing out on Capitol Hill with the Epstein files, because some things never change, and power superseding power, or party, is one of them.
Yeah, and I think the reason we have gotten so much broad-based support from people, but also pushback in some quarters, is because people understand, and you see this in the Epstein polling, but you've also seen this in the polling over the years that we've done. People understand that this is not political at a time when almost everything is, right? Everything has become like, everybody go to your corners and your team blue and your team red, and let's fight about stuff. But I think that's not real life. And unlike social media, where you see so much of that amplified, this kind of partisanship, this is real life. And people understand the horror of what Jeffrey Epstein did, and they understand the horror of protecting his co-conspirators, or people to whom he trafficked these girls. And they are not going to stand for that. And I think regardless of party, they're not going to stand for that. You're about to see a vote taking place in the House of Representatives that I think is going to be unanimous. I mean, Mike Johnson, the speaker, who's fought so hard against this discharge petition, said he's now, just breaking news right now, said he's voting for the release of the Epstein files.
Yeah, I mean, Trump kind of gave them cover over the weekend. Right. This is not to get into politics, but I'll just say this is a huge loss for Trump and his control over members of Congress. You know, he hasn't been able to control the influencers, and they were also speaking out about this, but he certainly has been able to control every Republican in Congress, or most. except for Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace and Thomas Massie, and a few others. But I think that this is it could be a turning point politically for Republicans feeling like they can finally have a spine to stand up for what their constituents want versus Trump wants. I think from a political point of view, this is fascinating to me because, and here's the other interesting thing. Imagine if this then John Thune feels the need to introduce this in the Senate, which I think he will, because he's been given the blessing as of yesterday that Trump said he should. And then it will come to Trump's desk. Now, imagine this picture with Trump standing with Epstein survivors behind him, signing this into law that he's going to release the files and taking credit for it.
I am.
It's just going to be. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but as long as I guess we get the files out, fine. But that bothers me.
I am going to just say one thing about that. And no, I don't know why people have not picked up on this, but I actually have been going down this rabbit hole on exactly not just what's in the trove of documents that were released by the House Oversight Committee, but also the language from this from this legislation that the House is going to vote on tomorrow. And
today, I think.
Today, maybe. What this would allow the Justice Department to do is to release things that are not deemed to be confidential is not the word, but are not deemed to be matters of national security effectively. How quickly do you think that this president, who can unilaterally say that anything is things that are not classified, how quickly do you think that this president will classify everything he wants classified in there to prevent it from coming out?
Yeah, and also because he opened the DOJ investigation, and they appointed a New York lawyer instantaneously to investigate, of course, only Democrats listed, Clinton and Summers and all these other people. Will that be the caveat here, that because there's an open investigation going on now, that they won't be able to release the files or all of them? I mean, there's a lot of ways to look. Yeah. I feel like something happened over the weekend where Trump realized he was going to lose, and he had to figure out how to make it look like he was going to win.
Right.
This will go down as the greatest PR political disaster, I think, of all time. And we're not to the end yet, because we don't know how this is all going to end. But whoever's been advising him has been horrendous, or maybe they've been advising him and he's done his own thing, which is who he is.
Yeah, my understanding is the latter. Yeah, my understanding is it's the latter. My understanding is that they have been telling him all along, this is not working for you, Mr. President. He has just been losing it and doing what he wants. But again, as I said, and as you just said, there are many ways to prevent full disclosure here. I'll give you another example that nobody seems to be talking about. Steve Bannon shot 17 hours of footage with Jeffrey Epstein virtually until the moment that Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. In fact, on the very day that Jeffrey Epstein was flying back to the United States, and he got arrested from Paris. He got arrested once he landed at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. They were texting within hours of him landing about shooting more footage on Epstein's Island. And there are 17 hours of footage that is Epstein just talking. And it was supposed to be a biography of Epstein that Bannon was producing. Epstein was paying for it. That Bannon called a hagiography, that he kind of laughed at Epstein and said, you're looking for a hagiography, which is a biography of the saints. So I say this to say that there's 17 hours of footage that is not sitting in the Justice Department. It is sitting in Steve Bannon's house or office or wherever the hell Steve Bannon keeps the stuff. And the House Oversight Committee has not demanded it. And I don't know how much of this Bannon has redacted. Now, Bannon he claims he has a 5-part miniseries coming out from this footage called Monsters, the Secret Lives of Global Elite or something like that. But you know full well that Bannon's going to redact anything to do with things that are not good for Steve Bannon and his friends and play up the stuff that's bad for people Steve Bannon doesn't like. Why haven't we seen, and why hasn't the House Oversight Committee subpoenaed those unredacted tapes?
I know. There's a lot. I mean, and I discussed this on MS Now last night. I'm not so sure that there won't be more people indicted if these files are released. Because remember, it goes way back to Acosta in Florida giving a sweetheart deal years ago. We don't know. Maybe some of these modeling agencies that pimped out these young women to Epstein are going to be charged. Maybe, we just don't know. But we know there's some reason why this administration has not wanted to release this. We're not saying that Trump is a pedophile or that he did anything here, but there's some reason why, and hopefully we're going to find out.
Well, you talked about modeling agencies, and now we're going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but again, I'm not sure if people are aware of this. One of Epstein's alleged biggest co-conspirators in this, somebody who assisted in the sex trafficking, was charged by French authorities of sex trafficking and being part of Epstein's network, in a very critical person in the network, was a man named Jean-Luc Brunel, who was the head of several modeling agencies in Paris and in France. And Jean-Luc Brunel, as soon as Epstein was pronounced dead, 35 days after his arrest at Teterboro, Epstein hung himself, just to be clear, Epstein hanged himself using his bed sheets at the Metropolitan Correctional Facility in New York. In a very startling coincidence, Jean-Luc Brunel suffered an identical fate shortly after his death Epstein's death in 2019. Brunel disappeared from public view, and Gretchen, he went into hiding. In December of 2020, so a year and change later, he was apprehended as he was boarding a flight from Paris to Senegal in Africa. He was locked up, much like Epstein, as he was awaiting trial and charged with raping a minor, sexual harassment, participating in Epstein-linked trafficking networks, the same exact thing that Epstein was charged with. And he was found dead, hanging by his bed sheets in his jail cell at the Santé prison.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you raise who else in these modeling agencies might have been complicit. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I find it fascinating.
Well, there's some, I don't want to name any names, but there are some mentioned in the emails that have come out so far.
Yeah.
So, that is a whole nother thing. Anyway, just to big picture, we don't know who else could be criminally charged here. I don't think this is about just embarrassing people. This might actually be, criminal charges and against people who covered up. Maybe they're going to get in trouble. But anyway, I know you wanted to go to a clip because we have.
Yeah. I just want to say one more thing. There is no statute of limitations for these crimes, and people should know that. And also,
there is for sexual harassment, unfortunately.
There is for sexual harassment, not for child sex trafficking. Nor should there be, by the way.
Right.
And I think
sexual harassment either.
100%. Gretchen and I think we speak for almost everybody in America who says, let the chips fall where they may. I personally don't care which Democrat or Republican is caught up in this. I don't think anybody should. This is not a political issue. If you exploited women and girls, you deserve to be held to account. And I don't care if you were or are the president of the United States, for either party, or a prominent prime minister of an American ally, or a member of the royal family, or anybody. You deserve to be held to account. And I would hope that that is not a controversial belief. Unfortunately, I think it is in some quarters in Congress. It should not be. But as I said, there's a clip of Virginia Giuffre's brother, who has been speaking for her ever since she tragically committed suicide on April 25th of this year. And maybe we could play that clip from today's press conference.
That ran deeper than the physical ones. From the start, she wrote, they manipulated me into participating in behaviors that ate away at me, eroding my ability to comprehend reality and preventing me from defending myself. The most destructive wound they inflicted was that of forced complicity, a betrayal of self that was crafted by her abusers. But I stand here today to declare that their tactics of fear and intimidation did not work. Virginia's spirit could not be broken. She became a beacon of hope, a warrior, fighting not just for herself, but for every survivor who suffered in silence. She said, I felt it was my duty to stand up to predators like Epstein and Maxwell, I would put my neck on the line to make sure my daughter never has to go through what I had to endure. These survivors, like Virginia, have transformed into mothers and strong women, fierce in the face of adversity. Many of them have daughters the same age they were when they faced their own abuse. They are determined to break the cycle, to shatter the silence that has kept so many in the shadows. Virginia quoted in her memoir, "There I was, as the mother of 3 children. I felt it was my duty to stand up to predators like Epstein and Maxwell. I mentioned to Ellie in particular, her daughter, I would put my neck on the line to make sure she never has to go through what I had to go through. I said, joining Edward's CVRA case, what I would want somebody to do for my daughter or sister and friend. In the end, I said, I was just trying to do the right thing. That's what I felt like I'm doing," I said. "I'm making a small dent in this big world we live in." Well, Sissy, you didn't just make a small dent. You made a monumental impact, a resounding statement that echoed across the world. You built an unbreakable wall, a barrier that will protect future generations from the horrors of abuse. As we gather here today, I urge each of you, members of Congress, advocates, and all those who hear this message, to join us in this fight. We demand justice, accountability, and support for survivors. And we keep getting asked this: what does justice mean, you ask? It starts with acknowledgement. That's the first step.
It's close to home for you and me too, you know. But the heart-wrenching. Look, how can you be a member of Congress and say, "Hey, I think I'll vote against that guy"? Like, you know, I mean, you and I, we faced similar situations of trying to sum up the immense amount of courage it would take to come forward. And, since that time, luckily, are fighting for so many other people to make sure that they are not silenced. So I feel a lot of kismet with this whole other movement of Epstein. And thankfully, we did come forward, Julie, because these Epstein survivors wouldn't be getting the attention they're getting now had the whole situation with so many other people 9.5 years ago not started, And so, it's very personal for you and me, and very heart-wrenching for everyone to watch that. And thank God they did that today, so that every single member of Congress can look in the mirror and think about their wife, their mothers, their aunts, their children, and say, boy, I don't know how I'm going to vote today. Really?
I keep seeing, and I'm truly not trying to make this partisan, but I think we're just dealing with what we're dealing with here with respect to who's in charge of the House right now. There's a clip, we don't have it, of Speaker Johnson kind of begrudgingly saying, well, I'm going to vote for this, and I think all of our members are, now that we've been forced to do this. But I would hope that the Senate is given the opportunity to do something that we have not been able to do, which is to amend this legislation. I will say 2 things. One is the Speaker was not forced to do this. He could have brought up legislation himself to release these files and amended it any way he wanted. He chose to not do that, which is why this vote was forced. But the second is that, I don't know if they're counting on the Senate to amend this legislation to such an extent that it will become toothless. And I think this legislation as written now is, I wouldn't say toothless, but I think there's a lot of room here to cover stuff up. And I would hope that senators who might be listening to this, even from there's two types of senators who I think would be listening to this, right? The first are the ones who want to do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. And it is the right thing to do. I don't know how else to say it. Girls were raped and trafficked, and we deserve to know who raped them, who trafficked them, and to whom they were trafficked. Like, that should not be a controversial statement. So, and I think we have
and who covered it up.
And who covered it up. And look, we have certainly spent our share of time around senators over the last several years, and actually not just around several years, throughout our careers, both you and I. And there are good people there who I think will do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. But for those people who are thinking like Speaker Johnson purely politically, here's what I would say. Why would you allow the House to take a consequence-free vote only to leave you holding the bag of trying to cover this up? Politically, that is also a dumb thing to do.
Yeah, but I got two words for you. Donald
Trump. And if he goes and threatens primaries, that's fine. But as we see,
what, so be it. These people have to have a conscience at some point. And this is why you should have term limits too. So I don't want to go off on that whole tangent, but this is ridiculous. Grow a spine, pick up your pen, and say, yes, I vote for this. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't care. Do what you want on tariffs. And if you want to be a weak link and do whatever he says, and you don't want to vote with your conscience on anything else, fine. But today, you need to vote yes. And the Senate needs to vote yes. And Trump's given you the authority to do it now, which is the craziest thing ever.
Well, and one more thing. There's a member of Congress somewhere from down south, I can't remember who it was now, who tweeted out yesterday or maybe this morning something about how this is the Epstein hoax and basically mirroring Trump's words. And he got so much pushback on social media from when he tweeted that out from his own base that I will say, my friends, you may be worried about Donald Trump, but your base is not with this president. And he can't primary all of you, especially when your own base is with you. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, say what you will, understands where the base of the Republican Party is a lot more than the president does at the moment.
Well, she's made some other changes too. Like she actually apologized for political rhetoric. I mean, nobody knows what her plans are here, but
well, she wants to run statewide, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, anyway, I want to make sure we get to this other clip because speaking of the president, he said something that's very personal to me as well. All of this is personal to us, but he said this clip yesterday to a female reporter. Here it is.
Is there something incriminating in the file, sir?
Quiet.
If you couldn't hear it, he said, "Quiet, Miss Piggy."
No, just quiet, Piggy. Not even he didn't even do the
Piggy.
Piggy.
Are you effing kidding me? This is where we are now with the decorum of the President of the United States. And what was the pushback? Like, where was anyone else saying you can't? You know why they don't? Because they want to make sure that they're on Air Force One to be able to cover the stories. This is so personal to me because after Miss America, one of my celebrity judges wrote an entire book calling me Miss Piggy throughout the whole thing because he said I was too fat to win Miss America when I was 105 pounds.
Even if you were 150 pounds.
I know. But the shame that followed me, when I met my husband on a blind date, I was scared that he was going to go to the library and find this book and know that I was Miss Piggy. This shame followed me for years. This is what happens when we call women these names and nobody speaks up for them. And it's okay. We call people pussies. That is a woman's private parts. And we don't think anything of it because it's been institutionalized in our culture.
By the way,
in the United States, calling a reporter piggy.
As for the word pussy, I don't know why that's a pejorative. That is a very strong part of the body that pushes out children. You give me something that men have done that's with their private parts that they can't even push out a little pebble when they have a kidney stone.
Yeah.
Right? Listen, I have a question for you, because not just because somebody called you that, which is inexcusable, and we have all been shamed for our weight. There's not one woman in the world who hasn't been shamed for her weight. She's either too fat or too skinny. You're called Skeletor or you're called Piggy. Like, it doesn't matter. But I will also ask you a question as the journalist here. Where's the White House Correspondents Association? Like, why is there not an uproar today from the people who cover the White House? They throw a very nice dinner every April, the White House Correspondents, Association dinner, and everybody has a good time, and the comedians come, and everybody laughs. But when it matters, why? This is a Bloomberg reporter who he called Piggy, who has every right to be on Air Force One asking him questions. She was asking him about Epstein, which I think is also a tell that he lost his temper.
Of course.
Question. But why in the world have we not seen? Look, I understand that the White House press room now is filled with like 90% of podcasters who love Donald Trump, but of the CNNs and the NBCs and the Bloombergs and the ABCs and others who are there, which are, not supposed to be propaganda outlets, Politico, all of them. Where is the banging of the drum? Or are they so scared of this president and of this administration, and so scared of being sued for something that they're not saying a word in defense of their own colleague?
Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And it's all about access. Look what happened to the AP when they refused to call the Gulf of America, whatever I refuse to even call it that. So
the Gulf of Mexico. He refused to. He changed the name to the Gulf of Mexico
because they, as an AP, as an international, nobody else in the world was going to call it Gulf of America, and so for their standards and practices, they wanted to keep it the Gulf of Mexico. They were barred from the Oval Office. They've lost now in court. They won, then they lost. Mm-hmm. So that is just one story. But in more general terms, again, not to get too political, but this is the beginning of potential totalitarianism, where the press is scared to speak up and say things. And that's what we're seeing play out here, whether it's calling somebody Piggy, or yesterday I watched Trump in the Oval Office. When he said that the House and the Senate should vote for Epstein file release, he still called it a hoax, which it's not. He still said that President Bill Clinton was on the Epstein Island, which has been proven he was not. And crickets. So, when they come back from the press conference, the hosts do correct, right? And I love those segments when they spend, 5 minutes going through 50 corrections of things he said that were not true. But I think it's about being sued and access. And this is a very slippery slope and a scary time.
Yeah.
Which is why if this vote goes through today, and if it goes through the Senate, it's miraculous.
It's miraculous, but I just want to temper people's expectations. He can classify whatever he wants. Now, legally, he cannot classify things that are embarrassing to him or violations of the law or things that are not national security related, but who's going to hold him to account there? Not his Justice Department. So he's going to classify it, and he's anything to do with him or anything to do with his friends and anything to do with Democrats, he's going to release. And by the way, I hope he does release whatever he has in the Democrats, but let's be very clear. He should also release things that he's got on himself or friends.
I do think, though, that, Julie, something's changed in the last week or so. Like the pressure, you've seen the PR moves to try and not release this. You saw him send Deputy from the DOJ, Todd Blanche, down there to interview Maxwell in this little puppy love interview. And then give her special treatment and move her to another prison and give her extra toilet paper and yoga lessons. And speaking of puppies, giving her the ability to play with puppies. I mean, if that isn't the most outrageous thing. And he's never said that he would not pardon her. There will be an insurrection in this country if he pardons her, first of all. I just think something's switched over the last few days. I think, that was an attempt to push it away. Him putting the Department of Justice to investigate only Democrats last week, that was another attempt to push it away, to try and quell the base. We could go on and on about what the maneuvers have been, and nothing has worked to take this story out of the limelight. And in fact, what ended up happening was it went from just MAGA base being all about the conspiracy of this, it infiltrated the general public. So now you have a story where probably 80-90% of the general public has heard about this. People who don't even cover politics.
Yeah.
So anyway, we could pontificate and go on and on. We will have to wait and see how this all plays out. But stay tuned. Stay tuned because
all right, everybody. Well, thank you to everybody for joining us here today for our quick show, and we will see you back here. I think next Tuesday, Gretchen. I think we're okay with that.
Next Tuesday, or we'll come up and do something in between if some big breaking news happens.
For sure. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much.
Bye.